Hello friends, my name is RagePanda1 and we have a very exciting thing that we get to do today, and that is to level up a Sorcerer, which I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and I'm surprised to see that we're using all lightning skills, Static Orb and Lightning Blast, and of course we're going to be abusing Flame Rush and Flame Ward. We pretty much always use those on mages, because they're so good. But I'm going to let a little combat play over my shoulder while I just make one quick point, because I've been getting a whole lot of haterade. People have been uncapping the haterade because I have been saying that I don't like certain builds. Some people are taking that to mean that I don't like certain classes and that I think they're terrible and you're bad if you play this class because this class is bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I mean at all. I just mean that for the particular guide that I am doing, which I am not writing, these are from Maxroll.gg. This one is written by Tarek. Many of the other ones have been as well. I think he did all the leveling guides. Some of them are my favorite things I've done in the game. Some of them I don't enjoy at all. I'm talking about this specific build. One that people get really mad about is the one about Detonating Arrow, because they really love the Rax version of the endgame one that uses the daggers to completely change how the build works. Well, I'm sure I'm going to like that when I try it too. I did not like the leveling guide that was using Detonating Arrow, and we all have our own preferences. So, daddy chill. It is what it is, alright? I like what I like. I do what I do. And I also got a comment saying that it's disingenuous for me to use any uniques while I'm leveling through the process. I completely disagree with that. I think the premise of that statement is 100% wrong. If you find something that you like to use, you should use it. These guides are made to not need any of those things to be used. And if I'm using one, it's not changing the fundamentals of the build. None of the uniques that I'm putting on are required for the build. They're just something fun that I wanted to throw on. So with all of that out of the way, let's look at our pros and cons. We've got easy gearing, high damage in campaign, multiple layers of defense, and we've got good single target and good clear. And that's something in my own builds that I've noticed has been a problem. I will be too focused on one or the other, so either I do a ton of damage to one dude, or I absolutely wipe screens, but finding the balance between being able to do a lot of boss damage and a lot of damage to just a group of enemies, it's a difficult balance to strike sometimes, and they're specializing in multiple different skills to give themselves that option, so I'm excited to see how that works out. It's supposed to be a mana-intensive build, but since we're not specializing in all that much stuff, we get to use Mana Strike, and that's fine. I have no problem using Mana Strike for mana management, but it will require us to get up close and personal, especially on bosses, and doing melee attacks against bosses feels bad because you get punished by not being able to dodge mechanics while you're swinging. One thing I think is hilarious is normally we have multiple sections that we can click through on these skills and passives trees. This one just says you don't need to respec anything, and there's a single one that we're going to be working through from the beginning. No respecking needed at all. Gotta love it. That is absolutely fantastic. However, we are going to be using different skills, like we'll have teleport on the bar until we unlock Flame Rush. And as usual on a caster class, they always recommend the Root Staff. That's probably because of the mana cost reduction and a relatively decent spell damage that's on there. Otherwise, you'd be looking at a wand that's like -3 cost and 3 spell damage. We're looking for increased spell damage and chance to ignite on hit. We don't even care about the last suffix, which I find to be interesting. If you are doing this character as an alt and you already have some uniques, there might be some good stuff that you could throw on, like the body armor that gives you elemental damage, relics that do the same, things that give you leech from elemental damage. All of these things are going to just make the game a lot easier, but since I made somebody really mad by putting on uniques the last time, I will not do it unless I find one on the ground, and then I will show you that I found it on the ground, or I'll try to do that anyway. And we're also looking for specifically this runic scroll, because its implicit gives us an extra 3 spell damage, and at the beginning of the game that is a considerable amount. It's going to help us a lot in the early levels if we can find one. And of course we're going to download our loot filter, but I wanted to mention that these loot filters are not meant to be a final solution for everything you're ever going to need for this character. They're just supposed to help you along the way, and you're not even supposed to pick up everything that shows up on the ground. You're supposed to pick up things that you might be able to craft into an upgrade. The reason for that is they don't want you spending a million years going through your box and having to store items and sell items and think about what you're doing. You just think, can I make this an upgrade? All right, then I'm going to grab it. And loot filters are a complicated topic because they are meant to be constantly evolving, and the more characters you're playing at once, the more complicated they get. I have been working on some solutions to that to make it an easier thing to prioritize. So keep an eye out for a video that's describing how you can do that and how you can evolve it along with your character, because that's really what's necessary here. It is worth mentioning that they're not trying to make the single best build that could possibly be made. If I tried to clear that group I just cleared using anything other than Elemental Nova, it would have been really bad. So the build is just kind of going for its own theme and just having fun, not necessarily using the single strongest ability in every single circumstance, and I can respect that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I'm going to continue using what they want me to use instead of the single best thing I could use, because I'm in it for you. If this isn't your first mage, then you're going to unlock Glacier like I just did, and you're going to want to put it on your bar. But actually, if we just do this from off screen, it's not so bad. People come in close, we hit them with the snap freeze, and the clear is not bad. It's not a single cast like we'd get with Glacier, but it's fine. Just use your range as much as you can, because it actually makes the game pretty easy. They do say that in the guide, but I don't know if they put enough emphasis on it. I have gotten myself a pretty decent root staff, and now I'm excited to see what sort of damage I'm going to be putting out. Single target here. Ooh, 1%. 1% per spell cast. I can just stand in the fire, right? It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, that's slow. That ain't good damage. Not yet. I thought that this fight might showcase why they're doing what they're doing with this little chain lightning. And that's because you get a lot of bosses where there's an extra totem they summon, or adds they summon, or whatever it might be. And this lets you do your boss damage and also take care of the other ones because we've got the extra chaining damage. So that can be pretty useful. Pretty useful. You can see the single target damage, though, leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. It's just taking a little longer, and it's actually pretty fun to use, so I'm pretty happy with it still. So here we are, and we have our static orb unlocked, and it's an ability, man. It's hard to control. I'm gonna work on getting used to that and finding some tips for you to help it work, but right now, it hasn't been my favorite for clear. My damage has been a little low as well, but we just upgraded into this quarterstaff, which they've said is a pretty good thing to have. Unfortunately, it has fire damage. I tried to re-roll it into something useful, but I wasn't really able to. That's just what we're stuck with for now, but the damage over time still kind of helps us. We've got some other random yellow gear here. I'm trying to avoid using the uniques. Apparently people don't like that. But I did get a +1 to static orb on the helmet, which is very helpful. Other than that, we're just going for health and resistances on our idols, and a little bit of leech on the gloves. Now, nobody can say anything about me using these ones, because everybody gets these ones. So don't even start with me. So I feel like I have an understanding of what they're trying to make happen here. They literally just want us moving. They want us moving. They want us putting out all of these orbs that we can put out, and not trying to kill everything. You know that's how I play anyway, so I like that. And now that I've started doing that with this build, I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit. There's no reason it should take this long to be able to kill anybody. And they say to just use Lightning Blast when you're fighting these. That's what it specifically says in the guide. And that just ain't working out. My gear, my implicits, my abilities, everything is exactly what they're requesting of me, but the boss damage just ain't there. For walking through the campaign, though, actually really good. Surprisingly, I'm turning around on that one instantly. Like, if you're just moving and teleporting and you got your orbs chasing, it's fine. It's going to keep you leveled up with the place that you're with, and you're going to be moving around really fast, having a good time. So I like that part about it, but they don't necessarily describe that to you. If you're trying to clear everything using this build, you are going to hate your life. What I've been doing is I've been skipping all of the elites that show up. I don't care. I don't need to fight them. It takes too long in this build. And I think that having an idea of what you actually need to kill and what your build specializes in killing is good if you're trying to go for speed. And I am trying to go for speed because I would like to get through it, you know? I'm ready for monoliths, baby! In our first monolith, we went in with basically not enough resistances at all, and in the end, you're gonna see we don't make it through this one. But it was very quick, and the static orb is a lot of fun to use at this point. I'm pleasantly surprised because initially I didn't like it at all. It just wasn't that fun. It was hard to target, and if you're worried about targeting it and making it do something that it's not trying to do, then it's not going to be very fun. Luckily, it was pretty clear to me pretty early on that it just needed to be used in a different way, and I'm sure that that's true for a lot of other builds that I haven't been enjoying, but we're all going to run into that when we're using guides like this, and that's why we're having a look at how they work. As for the single target damage, the problem lies within the guide where they tell you in single target to only use Lightning Blast, but that's not actually what they're trying to say. I think my instinct has been this whole time to just be doing my static orb anyway, and I think that's what they mean. I think what they mean is that the only time that you're casting Lightning Blast is when you already have your orbs spinning around you and you're just adding in a little extra damage with the Lightning Blast. If that's wrong, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not written out that well, because the way that they write it, it says only use Lightning Blast when you're fighting single target. So that means both things, and I think it's pretty obvious at this point they want you to be doing static orb, and I felt like that's the way it should have been from the beginning, but I'm trying to follow these guides exactly as they're written, and sometimes it's not as easy as it should be. However, the Lightning Blast is so not fun. It's kind of boring. I really love Chain Lightning in basically every game, but this one just doesn't feel that good. I want it to be crazy and going to every character on the screen and doing all sorts of fun stuff, but it never quite gets to that point, and in different builds you can make it chain to a lot more people. I understand that in this build they're trying to use it to increase our single target damage, and that makes sense to me. I just don't enjoy that part of the build. The static orb part, though, is a real fun. It is really growing into being something that I like a lot, and I'm excited to start getting Flame Rush and seeing if those orbs will travel with me in a line instead of with teleport. Right now, if I teleport, they just show up next to me. But if I can drag the orbs in a line with Flame Rush, then that could add to some interesting mechanics that we might be able to abuse and enjoy. So my suggestion, if you're running this build, is to just keep moving, much like we always try to do anyway, but this one even more than the others. The more people you come in contact with, the better. The build falls apart a little bit on the single target, and I don't think it's going to recover, but we'll see. So hopefully when I come back with max resistances and the gear that they definitely want me to be using, my staff's a little underpowered right now. My resistances are terrible. Maybe when all of that is in order, we're going to be having a really super great time, and even on bosses we're going to be dominating. I'm really hoping that that's the case. Not too bad. The damage is picking up. The damage is picking up. Even the Lightning Blast is starting to be fun. And it's all because of a single point that we got to put in, and that is the point where we have convergence, and it makes it so that it can trigger multiple times on the same guy. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but with all of the gear that we're getting in line, I do have a better stick going now. This is exactly what they want me to be using, except that the minion damage should not be there. But other than that, it's exactly what they want me to be using, and my damage is much higher for having gotten that. Normally, they're using these Avarice gloves instead of these Outcast gloves that I'm using, but I needed a little bit more resistance, so I made that trade-off. And also, we've got some Prism Wraps and our Tome of Elements that both give us some elemental leech, which is helping us to stay alive. All in all, this build is really shaping up to do some great things, and I'm having a good time with it, and everything that I didn't like about the build is starting to become likable, or it's already like really awesome. Like the static orbs are super fun, so awesome. I was surprised to see that we're going all the way into getting a maxed out Rift Bolt node here in our Sorcerer tree before we're even getting Flame Rush. It's fine. I mean, that penetration helps a lot, and the Lightning Leech helps a lot. Both of those things are super great, but luckily for me, I have now got the 5 points into Rune Master, so I have Flame Rush, and I've played with it a little bit, and you get to cast your static orbs and drag them along with you with the Flame Rush, and that is super fun. This build just keeps getting better and better, and after we've gotten those points in, I'm going to start going into Spellblade now so that we can get a little bit of free elemental resistances. It's actually 18% is pretty considerable, and some elemental damage, which goes a long way. One thing that I was concerned about in our static orb tree is that we are taking this point for Storm Burst, which says that your static orb is going to explode after 4 meters. That sounds like they're not going to stay out for any amount of time at all. However, what it actually means is that it explodes after it is 4 meters away from you, so it orbits a time and a half, maybe 2 times before it explodes, and that is even if you use your Flame Rush. It still will stick with you in orbit, and it doesn't explode that fast, which makes it much more useful than I expected it to be, and it's a more damage multiplier, and we always love those. So then we're going to go into our Volatile Outburst, which is going to give us even more of a damage ramp, and it'll slow down the projectiles so that they're on the screen for more time. I have noticed that now that I have the smaller orbs, it makes it a lot easier to judge the distance of where my orbs are at, which makes it a lot easier to aim them. So all in all, this build just keeps getting better and better and better, and I did not expect to like it this much. I don't think it's going to be a daily driver for me, but I'm really happy to have played it, and I can't wait to finish out this Monolith and see where we stand in the end. We've finally made it to the last quests of this Monolith, and that means that it's time for our review portion, and let's see how we actually enjoyed this build. Well, I think it was a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. It says that it has great single target and clear damage. I think it has great clear damage. I still don't think the single target damage is that amazing. It does get there in the end, but certainly not through the campaign. And one of the pros that they put on their website for this is that it has high damage in the campaign. Campaign bosses felt terrible. Absolutely awful. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the use of Static Orb on single target. When we look in our final setup section, it says, use Lightning Blast for clear and single target until you unlock Static Orb. Then use it only for single target and Static Orb for clear. So that sounded to me like you don't use Static Orb for single target, you only use it for clear, and you only use Lightning Blast for single target. But then, throughout the campaign, I thought, I seem to be doing way more damage if I'm using both, so is that what I'm supposed to do? It was working out fine for me as I was doing that, and I continued doing it into the end. But when we look at the bottom of our guide, in the summary, it says, use Static Orb for clear and Lightning Blast for single target. It really seems like they just want you to do Lightning Blast for single target, but I don't think that damage was better. It seemed to be way better using Static Orb for what I had going on. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure what they were saying there, and that's a problem. They said it twice, and it's still not clear whether they want you to be actually using Static Orb or not. It seems like they're telling you not to, but then when you don't, the damage is really bad, so I'm not sure. I thought maybe the guide was out of date, so I looked and it has been updated only about a month ago, so it can't be that far out of date. But to be fair, that's a bit of a minor issue, and I would say you do whatever feels the best for you. Certainly it wasn't until I got the Convergence node in Lightning Blast that it felt good at all to be pressing it as a single target attack. So I'm not sure. As far as the gear is concerned, we're going for a lot of crit in this build, and therefore a lot of crit multiplier. And even in the early game, I was critting all over the place, and I feel like there was more room for that to be maximized to increase my campaign damage. They do say in the gear stat priorities that crit strike multiplier and crit strike chance is very effective, but they don't actually put it on any of the gear, and I feel like if you're going to look through, you're going to look at the pictures and see what gear they put on there, and that's where you're going to make your judgments from, at least for most people. I was well aware that I needed crit, and I was building it, and it was working out pretty well. Now, obviously, by the time that I got to these quests, I was absolutely destroying things and having a very good time doing it. I think the build looks cool, it feels cool. Being a lightning mage is really awesome to do, so I really like all of that part. I'm glad that I was wrong. There was a point in this build where I thought, this build is so bad and boring that I should just start a different series when I get through these leveling guides of trying to make a better leveling guide for some of these builds that have been so awful that I don't even want to play the game. There's only been 2 or 3 of those so far, but I feel like there's room to improve, for sure. And having this early game where they're telling you to use Lightning Blast exclusively instead of Glacier or Elemental Nova or something that's going to clear a bajillion times faster, it just seems like they were trying to make a guide where you never had to respec anything, and that was the main goal here. Doing the best thing was not the main goal. But when you get to around level 50, you're off to the races, and this build is absolutely a great time to play. On this boss, again, for this Monolith, when you go to kill the phylacteries, you can't do melee. And on this build, I need to use Mana Strike to be able to get my mana back, to be able to do my skills, and I just couldn't get it to swing. I couldn't get it to swing. No matter what I tried, and I have had this problem. I know how to solve the problem. I know where to stand to solve the problem, and I just couldn't get it to swing, and I literally died on this boss for the first time ever because I just couldn't get it to do anything. And then I didn't have mana, and I got trapped by the boss, and I couldn't get it to do anything. I just kept trying to get one swing to go off so that I could put up a flame ward or maybe teleport out of there. It just wasn't going to happen, and I did not enjoy that at all. I think that might be related to using a controller. I'm not sure, but man, they gotta fix that melee glitch. I will say that this is a build that you should stick with, though. If you like what this final product looks like, it's very fun. Man, when you get Flame Rush, especially when you get the lightning version of Flame Rush, and you get to dash in there with all of your orbs circling you and just eviscerate everything, man, that is really fun. I do wish that the orbs lasted longer than they do. It's unfortunate that they don't, but them exploding does a lot of damage, so that's good too. All in all, I would say that this is more of like a mid-game guide. If you're going through the early game and you're having a hard time, you should just use whatever is feeling good for you. Glacier, Elemental Nova, you can make them both really strong. You don't need anything special to make them strong. There's no reason to be going through the beginning of this game with Lightning Blast. It just feels absolutely terrible. Even when you're trying to use it from off screen, it's not great. It feels a little better in that situation, but it's still not great. So as a leveling guide, I don't think so. I don't think it's that great. As a final build that they've come up with, it's very fun. And it slowly gets more fun as you go. I just feel like they gave up too much in the early game to make a guide where you didn't have to respec it all. And maybe this was the last mage that they did, and they got tired of saying use Glacier, and so they just wanted to do something different. I'm not sure what went on there, but still, in the end, the build was extremely fun. I did have fun playing this one basically the entire time, except for fighting bosses in the campaign. That felt terrible. So if you have any interest in my idea of making my own builds to make up for the ones that I don't like, that is certainly a thing that I could do. I'm about halfway through their leveling guides now. It's certainly a goal I'd be willing to tackle if there's interest in the subject. And if you enjoyed anything that I've said here today, or you learned anything by watching this video, then I would invite you to subscribe. Go ahead and like the video so other people know that there's something of value there. And for now, I want to thank you for watching. I have been Rage Panda 1, and I will see you in the next one.